Film starts with this little black guy named Bernard, who is a shoeshine guy, but notice, he deliberately chooses to set up his stall in front of the bank so that his customers are all rich white people. He doesn't care about the little money he earns by shining shoes. He works slowly so that he can overhear the financial secrets that white people are talking about. As they left, the little boy would write it down in a notebook. He really only wants valuable financial knowledge. From a very young age, he knows that his lifelong dream is to become a banker. This is Texas in 1939, a place where black people are subjected to severe discrimination. His father tells him sadly that his dream is impossible, but Bernard's eyes show determination against all odds. 15 years later, the grown-up boy moves to Los Angeles with his wife Jonas and children. Racial discrimination here is not as serious as his home, so he decided to start his business here. A family of 3 has to live in a dilapidated utility room of a relative. Nevertheless, Bernard promises his wife that they will move out soon. He starts out as a real estate agent and searches for homes for sale everywhere in the city. He finds that the black community in Los Angeles is overcrowded while the white community still has many vacant homes. Black people have rental needs and financial strength but no market. This is a great business opportunity for real estate speculation and rental. He sees a white-owned apartment with weeds on the front door that is clearly not in great condition. He sees the advantage of the location of the house, which is adjacent to the black area. He goes to the owner and says, "You have only rented half the apartment, so why don't you sell it to me? I'll give you $30,000 right now, and when I rent out all the rooms I'll give you another $5,000. Although the owner admires his idea, he does not want to do risky business. As Bernard expresses his understanding before leaving, he suddenly glances at the owner's calendar, which shows it has been given to him by a local bank manager. So a thought comes to his mind that he says goodbye to the owner and goes straight to the bank, where he finds the manager sending the calendar. The manager's secretary, who discriminates against black people, refused to introduce him to the manager. He waits for a few hours at the bank's door and immediately stops him when the manager comes out. He says, "I know one of your VIP customers. The business I do will benefit him and I hope you can approve loan for me." But the bank manager rejects it without thinking. That night he gets a call from the owner. The owner asked him if he had used my name to take the loan. He has no choice but to apologize. The boss does not blame him for the unexpected, but admires his belief that he will not give up until his goal is achieved. The owner decides to guarantee the loan for him, so he gets the first loan of his life from the bank and buys the property. An old white woman has come home from shopping when she sees a black man at her door. "What you are doing?" she asks in a loud voice. Black man calmly responds, "I am renovating apartment building." Old lady speaks with low face, "Workers like you should be careful." Bernard replies, "Don't worry, this is my building and I will definitely take good care of it." Speechless, the old woman goes home in anger and the police soon arrive. When he told Bernard, an old lady called the police and then asked him if he pretended to be the boss and denied it. Unexpectedly, Bernard pulls out a copy of the real estate certificate, discovering he has trouble, so he prepares. The police realize that the house was actually his. That night Bernard returned to the apartment building. The old lady at the door sees him and immediately tells him to get out as it is not the time for renewal. Bernard still calmly replies that "I am not the renovation worker, now I am the boss." The old lady is dumbfounded and a few days later she passes out in anger because she doesn't want to be in the same building with black people. As the old woman leaves, Bernard rents out her house to a black woman. Certainly, the black tenant market is huge as it has seen it. The building fills up quickly and Bernard gives the former owner a follow-up payment after negotiating. The former owner greatly admires Bernard and offers to start a business with him. Bernard chooses the house and calculates the income, and the old owner negotiates the transaction and signs a contract with him. White people will not know that they are doing business with black people and they will split the revenue. Bernard readily agrees. The collaboration between the two goes very smoothly and they make a lot of money right away. Bernard also moves from an apartment block to a mansion soon after, providing a happy life for his beloved family. When someone discriminates against him, he will not kick back because then he will fall into the rules of the game of other people. He wants to play his own rules. Rational economics and maximum profit is his ultimate goal. However, life doesn't always go smoothly and challenges can arise at any moment. The former boss who worked with Bernard is old and frail and suddenly dies a few years later. His equity in the company is inherited by his wife. This woman severely discriminates against black people and does not want to cooperate with Bernard. She contemptuously offers to buy Bernard's shares at a much lower price and will sue him if he disagrees. In an era when whites and blacks used to litigate, who do you think the judge will take? Bernard is unwilling to be so mistreated, so he decides to go to court but has to give evidence to someone to prove his cooperative relationship with the old owner. He thinks about the bank manager, but the manager has already cooperated with the widow and avoids Bernard. An extremely dismayed Bernard stands at the bank and looks around, the neat bank building showing systematically discriminatory nooks everywhere. He is often despised when he goes to the bank just because of the color of his skin. Thinking this, a bold plan slowly pops up in Bernard's mind. There are 4 banks in a building and each of them has closed doors for this black man. At this moment, Bernard's mind generated a genius idea: I will buy this building and see which of you dare to discriminate against me again. So Bernard finds Joe, another black real estate developer in Los Angeles, and tells him his plan. First, Joe thinks he's out of his mind because the price of the building's land is too high, and never before has a black person bought land in LA downtown. But after discussing it for a while, Joe learns that Bernard is not a delusional person, but a thoughtful rationalist. Why does he want to buy this building? As long as he is the owner of the building, the bank will serve him. They do not deny him the loan, they will also disclose to him the real estate propensity so that his real estate business becomes easy. Joe is surprised by his idea, but after thinking about it, he is confident that it will work. Although he is extremely wealthy, he is also subject to white people everywhere. He would make more money if he could step on white bankers on white land. However, they still can't negotiate transactions directly with white people, so they have to hire a white person as an agent in this regard. Bernard already has an idea about mats that is helping him repair homes. This man is an honest man. He is also very ambitious, just a little inexperienced. So Bernard and Joe set out to train Matt extensively, teaching him golf high-class etiquette, mathematical thinking, and real estate. Matt lives up to the expectations and quickly masters golf. He can calculate real estate valuations like a young and promising entrepreneur while playing golf. At a golf club, Matt meets the owner of the bank building, which, of course, is also organized by Joe. Negotiations go well. Matt gets a chance to buy the building and the rest will be negotiated. But Matt doesn't know how to do it. Bernard helps Matt do all the preparations before the talk. He first counts the number of lights in the building after dark, calculates the building's vacancy rate, and then derives the building estimate value through the building's annual revenue and operating costs. Bernard formulates any numbers that may be involved and asks Matt to remember these numbers before meeting with the owner. As a result, no matter how much they bluffs about his wealth, Matt always stays a step ahead and gives the exact number, which stuns them. The accountant next to him is also dumb. They all think that they have encountered a math genius and they can't fool him at all. In the end, Bernard finds the building that costs more than $2.4 million for just $1.56 million. From then on, whenever Bernard went in or out of the building, the presidents of every bank would come to shake hands. The younger manager, who has made things difficult for him in the past, is shocked by the banking industry's support. Bernard and Joe's real estate careers are expanding rapidly. They single-handedly break the strict zoning of Los Angeles black and white segregation. Many young and promising blacks move into white neighborhoods. Many years later, in 1963, Bernard moves his family back to Texas to visit his father, Britton, soon after the vice president welcomes him. After dinner, Britton tells Bernard that he is proud of his achievements. The next day Bernard walks around the city with his son. Before they know it, they stand in front of the bank where Bernard worked as a shoeshine boy. At the time, Texas was the most racist place in America. They meet a young boy who shines like Bernard. To Bernard's surprise, the boy would only work in white men's shoes. This small incident touches Bernard and awakens a sense of responsibility towards his fellow man. He secretly makes up his mind that he should change the status quo and help the black community get better housing in his hometown. The next day Bernard visits Joe and tells him that they should buy a mainland bank in Texas. Joe thinks Bernard is out of his mind to even think about it because racism is so serious in Texas. But Bernard manages to show a compelling reason to make the purchase. In the end, Joe agrees to help Bernard. They recruit Matt again and use him to be their frontman once again. They meet with the bank's owner, Robert Florence, Sr. and Jr., to discuss the numbers of the deal. Despite Florence Jr.'s suspicions, Sr. sells the bank to Matt and his associates. As with the mainland, the bank acquired Barnard's and began operations helping African Americans in the city get approved for loans. It seems that Bernard aims to help his fellow men get a fair chance at housing and even opportunities to make money. Things go well for a while until Florence Jr. starts investigating the loans approved by his bank. One day Florence follows Matt and meets up with Bernard and Joe, telling him about the loans he approved and asking them to return to the U.S. threatened with a letter from the Treasury Department. He says that the department will inspect the functioning of the bank in a month. As Florence Jr. left the people, they discuss their next move. In the meantime, Matt comes up with a suggestion. He suggests that they buy another bank and transfer the problem loan from the mainland to that bank. They discuss the bank's purchase of Marlon Moore, and Bernard says the main problem is overseeing the bank's operations. In response, Matt suggested that he be allowed to run the new bank. Bernard expresses his displeasure with the idea, but he eventually settles with Eunice keeping an eye on Matt. In the end, Matt gets to run his bank the way he wanted. The next day Matt meets with a lawyer and begins signing loan contracts at his signal. Not long after, Matt gets a call from Florence Jr. about clients who want to take all their money off the mainland. To make matters worse, Marlon reaches out to Matt for help, a federal bank examiner. Bernard forces himself to dress up as a janitor so that he can get closer during the meeting. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter as the examiner discovers a serious problem on many loans. Bernard is in disbelief that the absurd loan got approved. Eventually, they found out that it was Florence Jr.'s who was doing everything. It is revealed that while running his bank, Matt bypassed protocol and used a lawyer who had been recommended by Florence. Through this, Florence was able to penetrate the problematic debts. After some time, Bernard and Joe tell Matt that the most rational move they can make is to walk away from Marlin's edge. Unwilling to let go of his bank, Matt makes a move without telling his colleagues. Joe learns of his move the next day and accompanies Bernard to the shores of the mainland. They confront Matt about the debt, while Florence watches the spectacle on his face with pride. Bernard tells Matt to bring his books, but it is too late. Federal bank examiners arrive to revoke Mainland Bank's license. While leaving the building, the FBI arrests Bernard and Joe. Bernard tries to stand his ground, but it is a futile struggle. After some time, Bernard and Joe meet with their lawyer, and he learns that his case got dragged along with some racial politics in the country. Meanwhile, Matt talks with Senator McClellan about testifying against his colleagues in exchange for his freedom. Matt thinks about his next move that night and makes a phone call. Matt follows McClellan's suggestions and testifies against his colleagues at a Senate hearing the next day. Later that day, Bernard also meets with McClellan and overhears his offer. He gives him the option of taking an immunity deal and confirms Matt's testimony, or Bernard can say whatever he wants and go to jail. In the end, Bernard decides to say the words that have been in his heart for years. He talks about racial discrimination in the country. Soon after, both Bernard and Joe's fortunes ran out. After the hearing, both were also sentenced to federal prison. Florence Jr. buys the Mainland Bank for a small portion of the price paid by Bernard and Joe. Meanwhile, Matt Steiner has never been charged with a crime. Many years later, Bernard and Joe break out of prison. Jonas finds it strange that both the men seem happy even after having lost all their fortune. It turns out that is not the case at all. Joe reveals that they have properties next to each other in the Bahamas. Eunice is in disbelief and asks Bernard, "How did this happen?" It turns out that the man, Matt, called the night before his testimony to Bernard. He told Bernard about the senator's deal and apologized to him. In return, Bernard asks Matt for a favor before the government can confiscate his assets. The film ends when we learn that Bernard and Joe's residential estate was instrumental in the fight against housing segregation in LA, and that they still have two houses next to each other in the Bahamas. Thanks for watching and subscribing, as it helps the channel.